Test. Hello. Good morning, everybody. I'm Agathluck. Good morning. Whatcha? So I would like to start off, I would like to ask our Superintendent, Tracy McMillan, to do the opening and the welcome.
Good morning, everyone. And it's great to see you here this morning. And welcome to our District In-Service Day. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tracy McMillan, and I'm glad to serve you as the Superintendent for Coast Mountain School District. It's great to see our teachers, administrators, district staff, trustees, and our guests gathered here this morning as we begin a new school year. I want to thank you for the dedication, the care, and hard work that you bring to our schools and school communities every single day. I wish each and every one of you a year filled with success and joy with our learners. We begin by acknowledging with respect and gratitude that we live, work, learn, and walk alongside the Tsimshian, Gitxsan, Haisla, and Niska nations. As a district, we are deeply honored to serve the learners and families of those nations, and we commit ourselves to ensuring that the needs of all learners remain at the center of our work. Today's theme, Walking Together, Honoring Truth and Reconciliation with Local Knowledge and Stories, invites us to learn, reflect, and take meaningful steps forward together. We are grateful to begin this day grounded in teachings of local knowledge and stories from knowledge holders who remind us of the power of story, land, and culture. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce some of our district staff and teams that are joining here today. And maybe I'll just ask them to stand, give people a wave, because these are people that you will see in the schools providing support to you. So starting off with our district education team members, could you just stand up, give a wave? So we have 3 here. Yay. We also have maintenance and facilities here. Come on, guys. We have our finance team. Finance, give us a wave. We have HR, Human Resources. And our information technology team. And of course, we have people who work every single day in our schools, our principals, vice principals, teachers, support staff, education assistants, Indigenous support workers. Thank you all for being here this morning. So a bit later, you will hear from our keynote speaker, Leona Prince. So I've had the privilege to know Leona now for a number of years, and I know that her messages are always thought-provoking, very inspiring, so we look forward to that. And also, for those of you who may not know, but Leona's books have been on the bestsellers authors list across the nation for a number of years, and in particular, her book, Be a Good Ancestor, was 61 weeks on the bestseller list. So our new Director for Indigenous Education, Donna Mortimer, she will introduce Leona in a more fulsome manner later on this morning. So thank you again, everyone, for being here today, and I will pass it over to Donna.
This is why I don't like standing beside her. Because everything's so tall. Anyways, so to start off, some housekeeping items. Please ensure all cell phones are turned to silent so we can avoid interruptions during the sessions. We've had some feedback from previous sessions. The background chatting during the keynote presentations can make it difficult for others to hear, especially those joining virtually. So we ask, out of respect for our speakers and for everyone listening, we kindly ask you to limit side conversations, and thank you for helping us create a respectful and focused learning environment. Following the keynote, participants will be returned to their schools and workplaces for lunch and to take their afternoon sessions. Okay, Wachia, Amagathlak, good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome elders and knowledge keepers, Sharon from Kitsilem, Kitsilis, Lakwalams, and Ann McDames from Kitsilis. Today, they will be sharing their stories, experiences, and knowledge of this beautiful local area. We are deeply grateful for their presence and for their wisdom they bring. Their voices help us strengthen our understanding of the land, the culture, and the history that continue to guide our work together. Welcome. Where can I put my
Can you hear us?
Amagan Flat. Good
Amagan
morning.
Flag.
Amagan Flat. And
Amagan
Dalawad.
Flag.
And Dalawad means, how are you? I'm good. My name is Takae. The caring and giving one is what it means. And I'm from Kittilasu. From the old village, Takae name comes from the old village of Kittilas. And you can take a trip up there from Kalem Street, going up the hill, going on the dirt road, 12 kilometers, and you'll be by the old village. It's a nice drive. It's peaceful, it's quiet, it's good for the heart, just to be able to get away for a while, to have your peace. And I'll turn it over to my sister.
Amagan Flag, das hat nichts nüssem, Luem Gordo and will nisism, let Amlak Dow Gabau Duayu, Lak Gibu, Deep Dago, Kitsum Kalem, Ada Kitsalasu, Ada Lakwalams, De will Watgu, Kitsum Kalem, De will Tsogu, Waps, Wat Diwai, Samoyget, Wat Diwai, Samoygit nis wibajik skibao, Samoygit nis yok, at a sigam nas be soon. Chimshan knew you. I'm honored to be here, and we give thanks to our school district, Coast Mountain School District, for honoring our Lakyubam Chimshan, the territory on which we all work and play. The Chimshan Nation surrounding Terrace is that of Kitsimkalam and Kitsalasu. Our laws that we live by is Slomsk, respect. Flores Lipnoon, you respect yourself. Flores Selegerin, you respect other people, respect each other. Flores Chatni Go, you respect everything, the land, the waters, the oceans, the rivers. At a Gilk Zamaniskin, you take care of yourself. At a Skuskun, be happy. Be happy in all that you do, all that you say. Oixit Nusum for honoring our Lakyubam Jimshan. I'm honored to be here today. I have a day job, but to be here and sharing with you, you take that time because lukul adzik sagodo dakwan, I am proud of who I am. My late mother bestowed the name of Litam Lakdao Gabao back in '96. I've carried that name each and every day. I honor that name. And I respect that name. So Doixit Nusum for honoring us. Tachkaye, Signa Tachkaye, Adalatam Lakdao Gabao. Doixit. You could start your story.
Any questions? Oh. I'm honored to be here. I have been involved with the schools, and I'm happy that I'm involved with you. I've met quite a few of you already, and it's always nice to see you. You bring happiness to me, and I'm happy that I'm with you. And I'm happy that what you do in the schools for our children, that's really important. To be able to have an open heart, have an open ear to our children that needs to express themselves and not shun them away. It's a very important role that you hold of looking after our children, all children. They're all important. And that's an important role that you hold. The principals, I love the principals. You're awesome. I've seen your work in Thornhill, and my heart goes out to you because you are opening up your heart. And when something happens to the children, you're there, the teachers are there, you see what happens with them. It's really important, and then, you know, you call us. What can we do? And thank you, I really thank you for doing that. Because sometimes we do have troubled children in our schools. And some of them are shunned away. Some of them are not being really being listened to. I've seen that happen. But for you being in the schools now, I'm sure you have a lot of other children that have come to the schools. I'm just happy that you are there and that you're there for them during the school hours. And I'm also glad that you're able to phone, make contact with the parents to come up with different ways of how to deal with certain things. I was going to Riverside School. I was born and raised here in Terrace, right on Lake House Avenue. My dad helped build our house there. We never lived on reserve. I lived in town. My neighbors were Portuguese and Italians. Oh man, they make awesome bread. Thick jam on the toast. Really good. And so they were our neighbors, and we were friends. We grew up that way. The only time I saw our parents have a house full is when our people from the old village of Enderdoon, Kitsilaf, would come to Terrace, and they would stay with us. But other than that, it was all Kamsiwa children. Kamsiwa with white children, right? Other nationalities that I grew up with. So I didn't know, I didn't know how it was to live on reserve. I lived in town amongst everybody. They're all people. We're all people. We're all human beings. I never saw no color. I never saw that. We all grew up together. We went to school together. And that's what I instill in my grandchildren, to get along with everybody, to get along with the children, other children in the schools. If you have a problem, go see the principal, talk to your teachers, let them know what's going on with you. Don't hang on to it, because you'll see, in your classrooms, you will see children that are sitting here. They may have their head down. They may have their head like this. They don't want to talk. They don't want to be touched. And so you look at that, you'll know that something is wrong. Take that little time to speak to the child, to the teenagers, because there's maybe something happening. And if they feel that they can talk to you, that's a plus for them. And it's a plus for you to be able to connect with them. It's been going on for too long. Some of the stories that I've been hearing, what happens in the schools, and how the children would come home and they would cry, but they're afraid to say something. They're not allowed to say anything. And so that, by them doing that, it stems back from how their parents were. And that's a cycle that we, hopefully, God willing, that we will be able to break that chain so our children can live, our children can feel, they won't be afraid. When I went to school, I was only able to go to Occupational 8. Does anybody know what Occupational 8 is? Anybody?
Iron.
I was put in a high school. I couldn't go into the regular school of the high school. Occupational aid is where I was put. So after I finished occupational aid, I had to look for a job. I couldn't graduate. Why? Why was I put in that predicament? How come I couldn't go to regular school? To be honest with you, it still bothers me. Why was I labeled to not finish school? I don't know if you have that in the schools, something like that in the schools, where the kids can only just go so far and then they have to quit school. They don't graduate. Maybe they graduate, but they never really finished. Some of our children have been pushed to finish grade, but they're still at a certain level. We notice that when they come back to our community and they go back to school there, and we noticed. All children need to be treated the same when they're in school and not treated differently from everybody else, because it shows. So I went back to school. I did my GED. I said, what is GED? Is it like ABC? But I did. I got my GED. I got my grade 12. I said, wow. Took me a lot of years, but I did it. But don't ask me to do math. I love spelling. I loved spelling. I loved being able to stand up in class and do the spelling because I was good at it. Xylophone, whew. No. Mississippi, M-I-S-S-I-S-S-I-P-P-I. M-I-S-S-I-S-S-I-P-P-I. My grandchildren say, huh? You know. I want to thank the principals and the teachers that I've met in Thornhill. You have all made me feel welcome. And some of the teachers I've met here, at the high school, in Caledonia, you have all made me feel welcome. And so I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Any questions? My mother, my late mother, she couldn't finish school. My grandmother would take her with her paddling, traveling to Port Essington. That's where my grandmother took my mom to work in a cannery there. When they were finished, then they would paddle back home to Kitsillas. So my mom only went to school up until grade 4. That was it. But she's got beautiful handwriting. She can write. She's got beautiful handwriting. I said, wow. And she can print. She can do all of that. She can read. That's when she told me that all the schooling that she got was grade 4. She wanted to finish school but couldn't because she got married. Then there was arranged marriages. You couldn't just marry anybody. You had to marry who you were supposed to marry. That was then. Sometimes I want to do it now. Yeah, I want my grandchildren to say, no, that's the person you're going to marry. You're not leaving that person. I'm going to make sure, you know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, do you all know that you are so important? Do you feel it in your heart that you are important? Do you take the time to be yourself? Do you take the time to be within yourself? Look at your heart. Hear what your heart says sometimes. Man, that's powerful. Sometimes we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do in certain situations. The heart talks to you. Oh man, I fought a lot because I didn't want to listen to what my heart was telling me. And then once I let that go, oh wow, it works. That's why I like singing the song, and we'll sing it later, but I've shared it with some of you because it gives me peace and gives me comfort. It's a peace song. I like to sing. It's medicine for me. I like to stand by the water because that's also medicine for me. It gives me strength. I go to Shames Mountain. Have you all been there? Shames Mountain is beautiful, but it's also my healing spot too. Because when I'm so heavy, and it seems like my heart is just going down, and I want to scream, and you know. I take a drive to Shames Mountain. I drive up to the hill there. Nobody's around. Good, you know. Because then I jump out of my car. You're surrounded by the mountains. And I scream my heart out. I scream until I can't scream anymore. And I found my medicine. That's what I do now. I still do that. Try it sometime. Hear your scream. Hear your laughter. Hear your crying. Feel your tears going down. Then once you've all done, you will feel lighter, lighter, lighter. You all are awesome. I love you. Okay, I guess I'll turn it over. But yeah, there's so much to share, and that's just the iceberg. But I just want to share with you that I'm happy that you're all here. You're all here. You don't have to take what I have to say to you. You don't have to take it at all. But I hope I shared a little bit of something with you. And I hope that I'll still be able to be in contact with the schools because I love it. I love interacting with you. I love hearing your stories. I love seeing the children when they do the drumming. That's my medicine. Now we're going to do a choir with the children. I want to hear them singing. Thank you. Thank you.
I was born and raised in Loch Lambs, came out for high school, went back and worked there. But we'd always come up here, we'd always travel up here. My mom would bring us to our relatives, our Wilais, here in Terrace. And Anne's mom, my Auntie Phyllis, was one of them. We'd come and visit, and another aunt in Kitsim-Kalem. My mom and dad, after their 50th anniversary, they moved here to Kitsim-Kalem. So this was always a visiting home for my husband and I and our children. We would come up in 1998. I took a year leave of absence from back home in Loch Lambs and lived with my mom and dad for the year, not knowing that that was going to be her last year with us. But throughout the year, I accompanied her to events such as this. I would drive her and be with her and stand with her, not knowing I was going to be doing this, years down the road. My older sister assumed her be soon after my mom passed away that following year of cancer. Things happen in your life that you have no control over. And things went wrong for me back in Loch Lambs at my work. But it allowed me to come here and live that last year with my mom. She was born in Port Essington, Spokeshute. I've yet to step on that ground where she was born. I love hearing stories of Spokeshute. Every time we travel to Rupert, I look over there and I'm like, I'm going to get there one day. I'm going to see. So I love hearing stories. My last, the last words from my mom was to learn your language. She told me to learn my language. My mom and dad spoke it all my life growing up. But I didn't have the ears to listen to what they're saying. Back in attending Indian Day School, Port Simpson Indian Day School, was not a good experience. Back in the late 60s and early 70s. I didn't have a good experience in school. Innocent children. Just talking to my cousin. Our teacher sent us to the office. And we didn't know what that meant. We thought, oh, okay. So we went to the office. And the principal told us that we can't be talking in class. You're there, you listen. So because you were talking, hold out your hand. So I held out my hand, and this big yardstick came down. And the shock, the instant pain, the tears that followed. Because I've never been hit by anyone before. So my cousin and I both got that strapping. You live in an isolated community, you think you're protected. But the government has other plans. They had other plans for us. We lost a lot of our generation through addictions, through unresolved hurt. After we got our hands strapped, we had to go back and we had to sit on them for the rest of the class. But that's what we grew up with. That's what we had to deal with. I didn't start enjoying school till grade 8. We had a Mr. Oldford, Al Oldford was our teacher. And he instilled on us that you are the great grade 8s. You are the great grade 8s. And that ingrained in my brain. He allowed us to talk. He listened, just like Anne was saying. He was like a gentle giant for me. And made school fun. I made it so that I wanted to go to school. Back then, if we didn't go to school, our parents got into trouble. We didn't understand that as kids. But my mother told me, you learn English. You profess in English. Because that's how you're going to survive out there in this world. I'm not going to be here to protect you all your life. And she was right. It took a long time to trust anyone in authority, to trust people who are not like you, strangers. People who are the boss that you think, in my little mind growing up, that they can get away with anything. even if it means I have to suffer. But I survived. We supported each other, my cousins, my friends, and I. We supported each other through school. Some of us did not come out to high school because we're afraid of change. We don't know what's out there. And so I came here in '78, but I lasted 2 weeks here in Caledonia. Just because you feel that small. I put myself close to the door in homeroom on the first day of school because I did not know anybody. After 2 weeks, I told my mom I can't live here. So she transferred me to Rupert, where all my friends were, people from our hometown, people from all the other villages that went to school in Lac Willam's, people that I know, my friends. We were boarded out, and if we didn't have family out in the town of Rupert or Terrace, we were boarded out with strangers. My husband is a couple years older than I am. And going through the boarding home program, listening to his story, wow. We talk about it. So when I became a parent, my husband and I met in high school. We both graduated. We both went back home to work. He went off to college. Then I went off to college. We both started a family. And what it meant to be in charge of your own home, I felt really, really proud of myself. Wow, I'm the boss here. This is my house. What I say goes. But I inflicted hurt on my children, my older children, because I thought that's just the way you parent. Even though my mom and dad, they never hit me, I didn't hit my children, but I used my voice of authority. Until one day my son just said, "Stop it. You're scaring us." And that was like a bucket of cold water just splashed in my face, and it was like, and I just dropped, and I cried, and I apologized to them. I'm so sorry. I thank him to this day. And I thank my daughter because he was protecting his sister. For making me the parent that I am today and the grandparent that I am today. I'll share my son, my oldest son. He's a protector. He will protect us. He will protect his family. My older daughter, she taught us how to love without condition. She was such a loving girl growing up. She would hug you, she would have a smile for you, she would tell you she loved you. My husband and I, we moved to Rupert when I went back to college. And my mother-in-law, she said, you keep an eye on that girl. She trusts everybody. She just didn't want to lose her to anyone because she loves hard. So I thank them because without their teaching, I wouldn't be who I am today. Our youngest son, when we first moved here, our youngest son was 5 years old. And you take a look at my grandson now. His son is, my older son says, oh man, he's exactly like you when you were a kid. Getting into everything, just happy and free. He told, one day we were driving my dad just after my mom passed away. My dad, we picked him up from school here. And we were pulling into KFC. And he tells my dad, he says, I want to be like you when I grow up. And my dad says, oh, why? Because you sit at home, you do nothing, but you get money. On pension day, my dad would always treat us for KFC and get Matt his case of root beer. So, and he would look forward to those treats. But we work every day, and I guess we weren't buying him those treats. So he preferred to be like his papa, where he can just sit at home, collect his pension, and buy treats. So our Signa, she named him Anxious Wolf, because he's anxious from 5 years old. He wants to retire right now. Yeah, so that's our youngest son. Our youngest daughter, she is a miracle baby. When I was 7 months pregnant with her, I was sent to Vancouver because at the hospital here and at the clinic, they seen a mass on her brain. I really thank my aunties who believed in our Creator and offered everything up in prayer. Because that's what I did when I was told that your baby has a mass on her brain. I contacted every Christian friend that I knew, every colleague, family. And we were sent to Vancouver. and my nephew met us there. They did their tests. All the technicians came and did their tests. Then they told us, go for lunch. We're like, oh yeah, right, go for lunch. Come back after lunch. We went back after lunch, and he said, have a seat. And he said, I don't know what they seen in Terrace, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with your baby's brain. I was like, so thankful. She taught us hope and faith. From there, my journey and the language journey and meeting with our Siwalauksit of Somalia language, I made it my mission. And Mildred Roberts was working with the Naxagilika School as an advisor for our Somali language. I've yet to profess the song of Sleeping Beauty, the beautiful mountain that you see when you're heading towards Kitsimkalem. Sleeping Beauty Mountain. We had to learn it, and as part of our class. It was a challenge, but we did our best. When Dr. Michael D'Angeli was working with Naxagilika School, she had a lot of knowledge keepers and teachers in Metlakatla, Alaska. And one of their knowledge keepers and storytellers and the fluent speakers of Somalia worked at the University of Southeast Alaska. And she started an adult class for us in Kitsimkalem. So I encourage both our daughters to join me in the second and third year, and then the fourth year. Our youngest one decided that she was gonna take a break from that class. But our oldest daughter, Emily Dimsahaikabau, she made it her passion. She made it her commitment to learn our Somali language. So I'm learning along with her. But I haven't taken that time away from my everyday job to fully commit. However, she did. She works with our Kitsimkalem Somali language program. And she's had knowledge keepers, fluent speakers come to the Kitsimkalem Robin House and sharing in our language. So we're very, very fortunate. Lukul Eyalkinu, we are fortunate. Lukul Ejik. I'm very proud of Dimsahaikabau. She's worked with other resources in Terrace, our Coast Mountain College, UNBC. So we are very proud of her. But we're all on this journey together. We talk about truth and reconciliation. We need to reconcile within our own selves as well. Because we have to grow. I've grown. I never thought I would be sitting here sharing with all of you. We encourage our children, our nieces, our nephews, our grandchildren. You have a voice. You have a voice. And there's not anyone that can tell you that you don't. Because there's always somebody that's going to listen. Whether it's your friend, your parents, your grandparents, your teachers, your counselors, somebody is going to listen. Never stop talking. It took me a long time. This week has been a really hard week for me. There were some triggers that just threw me over the edge yesterday. A lot has happened. Little things happen, but they add up. Our worst enemy today is Facebook. Because that can do so much damage to a person, to a family, to a community, to your nation, if it's used in the wrong way. We always hope and pray that it doesn't get used in the wrong way. But when it does, when you're pointing fingers, it hurts. So that was the trigger of my week. I attended an elders luncheon on Wednesday, and one of the resource from Terrace taught us about tapping. And she was like, does anybody need to get rebalanced or rejuvenated? I'm like, oh, I really need it. I really need it. And so she taught us that. And I said, that'll be a good thing to share, because if I'm doing this, you know you're doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, because I'm needing balance on how to deal with that. As I need to deal with it on my own in a healthy way. And yesterday I felt like I offended a colleague. So after this get together, I have a gift to apologize to her, because that was my breaking point. And I have to apologize. I have to own that so I could move on. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate our Na'aksagillikyo school, our principal and our teachers. I appreciate all of you for our district. Because all of our children, our nieces, our nephews that live in town, go to your school, or they come to our school. It's unfortunate our school doesn't have the resources to help those children with special needs. That's where we are lacking. But it doesn't stop us to reach out to our community, our parents, to get the help, get the training, because only you are going to make the difference in your child. We will do the best that we can with what we got. So, Doig at Newsom, thank you all very much.
Do I have just a few more minutes? Awesome. I want to share with you, when we were going to school at the Riverside School when we were kids, my sister Pearl ran home and she says, "Mom, I told my teacher where you were born." Mom says, "Where was I born?" "You were born in Port Essendale." Port Essendale is a crazy house. My mom says, "Pearl, you're going to send me to the crazy house pretty soon." My other sister came back from school, excuse me, and she says, "Mom, I know how to spell butter." "How do you spell butter?" "SOS." Because it was on the butter box, SOS, advertising. Yeah. So we learn different languages, right? I thank you so much. I want to share the song. But we've been sitting for a long time now. I think we need to stand, take a stretch. I'm going to do the gin gin jla. I'm going to do the peace song. Are y'all stretching? Ah, that feels good, eh? Give yourselves a hug. Oh, it's awesome. Now everybody say, ah, ah, ooh. Okay, I want to share with you this song, and some of you know this song, and it's a fun song. It's something that you can share with your partner. It's something that you can share with your children. And it goes like this. I'll sing it once, and I would like you to join me. Gin, gin, jale, gin, gin, jale, gin, gin, jale. Gin, gin, jale, gin, gin, jale, gin, gin, jale. Everybody. Gin, gin, jale, gin, gin, jale, gin, gin, jale. Oh, you're awesome. I just met the music teacher here, so I'm going to go to him and ask him to put this all together for all of you. Oh.
Before Anne does the peace song, and while you're still standing, we're going to do another one. And when I say Jidasim Luam Gordon, which is you're happy, your heart is happy. And if you're happy and you know it, what do? Jidasim Luam Gordon Dashkando. Jidasim Luam Gordon Dashkando. Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon Dashkando. And Chlaxasi. Jidasim Luam Gordon Chlaxasi. Jidasim Luam Gordon Chlaxasi. Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon Chlaxasi. Jidasim Luam Gordon Weam Hound. Why wah? Jidasim Luam Gordon Weam Hound. Why wah? Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon Weam Hound. Why wah? And Saigite Wan is all together. Jidasim Luam Gordon Saigite Wan. Why wah? Jidasim Luam Gordon Saigite Wan. Why wah? Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon, Jidasim Luam Gordon Saigite Wan. Why wah? Whoa!
When I sing this song, it's a peace song. And there may be some of you that are in here that just maybe need a little bit of peace in your heart. Maybe you need a little bit of peace in your mind, in your soul. Whatever you're going through today, breathe and let it go. This is your day. This is your special day. This is you. You're all awesome. Little peace song. Ahoy, 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 ahoy. Thank you.
Before they go sit down, I'd like to thank you and the stories that you shared today, this morning, your experiences. It touched my heart. I am Niskapi First Nation. I was fortunate enough to grow up and learn my language. I am fluent in my language. And it's always hard to hear the stories of other people that when I first moved to BC in the Yukon, that they don't speak their language fluently. And it was the hardest thing to kind of wrap my brain around. I was like, why? So I was raised at my house, in my home, to speak Niskapi with my grandparents, my parents, my siblings, right? So it was really hard to wrap my brain about that. And sharing your story, Sharon and Anne, like it connected with me this morning. And on behalf of Coast Mountain School District, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the elders and knowledge holders, Sharon and Anne, for sharing your wisdom, stories, and teachings with us today. Your voices ground us in history, language, and traditions of this land. And your generosity in passing our knowledge strengthens the connection between our students, schools, and communities. We are honored to learn from your experiences, your perspectives, and we recognize the responsibility we share to carry this knowledge forward with respect. Thank you for guiding us with your stories and reminding us of the importance of walking together in a good way for the success of our children and our future generations. Toyo shut nusum. So I've practiced these 2 words this week, and knows. And it's my way of connecting to the land and the history that I teach, that I work. And eventually, maybe I'll be a fluent speaker, I hope. But amagatlak, right, as good morning, and then toyot nusum is thank you to all, right? So I encourage you all to take that challenge up and learn 1 word from the language, and just, bring it to it's the best way to connect with your students. It's the one thing that I did use and learning the languages of the local area and connecting with the students, because they will be impressed.
Go stand in the corner.
And in my language, now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Local Edixagoro Dagwasam. I'm proud of all of you for joining us this morning. We always like to end things in a good, positive energy. So take that with you and have a amasak and have a good day.
Okay, so we're going to take a 15-minute break. So we'll gather back up and start for the keynote speaker at 10:30. Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Man, students do better. They like go right into their seats and sit right down. Just waiting for a couple people to come in. They're straggling in. I see them. Okay. We are on a time crunch, so I'm going to begin. Wachia, Amagatlak. Good morning, everybody. It is my great honor to welcome today's keynote speaker, Leona Prince. Leona is an award-winning educator and a best-selling author who currently serves as the Director of Instruction for Indigenous Education within the Chaco Lake School District. Her leadership in education is matched by her deep passion for ensuring that Indigenous students are seen, heard, and supported in ways that affirm both their academic success and cultural identity. In addition to her professional leadership, Leona is also a gifted author and respected storyteller. Her writing and her voice carry powerful messages of resilience, identity, and connectedness, reminding us of the importance of stories as pathways for healing, teaching, and belonging. Through her work, she invites students and educators alike to reflect on who they are, where they come from, and the strengths they carry forward. Leona's theme of today, Indigenous Brilliance and the Power of Story, will guide us to think deeply about how stories not only preserve culture, but also shape the future for our students, our schools, and communities, and our communities. Please join me in welcoming Leona Prince.
Thank you. Oh, can you hear me? It's good? Huh? No, it's this thing. No, it's I got the, oh, there we go. I'm like, wow. One of my worst nightmares. The other happened this week, last Friday when we were holding our Indigenous 6th Day in district, and I'm behind the scenes doing all of the tech and worries of the day. Nobody really sees me, and my assistant unmuted herself. And my nephew happened to be talking at the time at one of our local high schools as a local knowledge holder. And then he's like, and then all of a sudden I heard, "Auntie, we can hear you." It's like, we have to fix this is going on. And then my assistant's like, "Where'd you get your skirt?" And I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys are So you guys have been doing brilliantly. Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. Thank you for our elders who grounded us in a really good way today. I'll be thinking about the words that you and your cousin, your sister spoke today for a very long time. I think, even when our knowledge keepers and knowledge holders open up and they're just invited to do the land acknowledgement, at those Pro-D events, I deeply listened to those few words. We got the opportunity to listen for a very long time about the local experiences and knowledges. But even those little snippets, I feel like there are nuggets of brilliance in those words, so Masai. Sai Leona Prince Sadni, Samsiu Habatizet, Vasiliu Habatzag Eldzat, I'm not even using this mic, just like, Snake Gla, Spape, Joyce Prince Gla, Gordon Barfoot, Abatni, Stiche Gla, Kwe Eni Netsu, Wadathni, Naklazli, Tsai, Naruten, Itwastai, and Lamaliazis, Lee Sky, Sean Abraham, Hayithni, Sakai, Tani Nedni, Kobe, Ella, Glaeva, Habatni. And so often I forget this piece, and I want us to deeply reflect about it. This is an important protocol from my people, and often I'll just go into my message because I'm so excited about it, but one of my elders pulled me aside and said, you know, you dishonor your lineage and all those people who made it possible for you to be there if you don't say who you are and where you come from. And if you're a guest in another nation's territory, you also need to introduce yourself not only to the people, but to the land. And so just following the protocols of my own people. And in doing that, I Waguspi, Winneglen, Gen, Gitsan, Heisla, Niska, La Simshen, Gaidzi, Ndiyenka, Wagasasien, now Sede, Ni Habiyinta, Masai. And that land acknowledgement is also protocol, and it was taught to me by 3 hereditary chiefs, Dr. Louise Lacerte, Beatrice Michelle, Rosalie Michelle, and they're female hereditary chiefs within our Bathlat system. And what they said, that first part, and you know, before I even said it, the question I always asked was answered. That first word, Wagus, means respect. And it's not a literal translation. There is really no word for Wagus in English, but the closest definition is respect. And that first part says, I respect the land that I'm on. First and foremost, it's the thing that supports us. And Indigenous people and languages and the land are synonymous. They are one. The next piece is I respect the peoples of these lands. And then the third piece is I respect the ancestors of these lands. And when you talk about the ancestors, it's more than the people that have passed. It's the histories, languages, and stories of that place. And after that, I usually challenge folks, and maybe it's still a challenge, what is the local word for this same idea of respect? Because as it was being explained to us this morning, I just felt great inside because it's very similar to our idea of respect, this word wagus. And it's the embodiment of respect. The expectation of my people, and this should tell us something about the standards that we need to keep within our system, because these are the standards of our community. They're very high. I have to be the embodiment of respect. What I say, what I think, what I speak, those all hold power, and they're a reflection of my community. And so when I'm out there, I have to always have in the back of my mind my family, well, myself, my family, my clan, my nation, and the land. How I am navigating this world respectfully, honored each of those layers of who I am. That's not hard at all. I'm doing okay. I'm going to test you if you're not a language speaker, but what was the word that was used that means respect in Somalia? Let me see. Oh, it's real bright. Floss. I heard it. That's it. Did I say it right? Floss. Okay. So that's the word. And I was just over the moon because I never get that reciprocity of learning, and I'm always curious about those local teachings. Tracy also grounded us when she opened up in these ideas of respect and gratitude. There's a thread that will happen today, and last night when the district hosted myself, my husband, and my son for dinner, we talked about you'll plan everything. You don't have to be too prescriptive because the words that are meant to be spoken today will come out. And it will mesh together in a synergy. and the messages that folks need to hear will come out ultimately. So again, thank you to Tahai, the caring and giving one. You live your namesake. And to Lahdama I'm going to try that again. Lahdama Dao Gabao. Yeah, okay. That was a lot. I was trying to write it phonetically in the way that we write our language to get it right. So it truly was an honor. Stories are more than entertainment. They are medicine, teaching, and relationship. And we had the good fortune of the medicine being laid down by our elders today, and in their way, welcoming you into the territory. There's the difference between a land acknowledgement and a welcome is the difference between being a guest and a host. And when the elders feel a comfort within our system and praise our system like it was done today, you are living that land acknowledgement and you are truly welcomed. And that's a good thing. I was so proud of you as those words were being spoken because it means that you've earned that welcome, for them to bless you with their presence. So, Snachalia for that. That quote up there is by Dr. Joanne Archibald, who is from the Stalo Nation. What we're going to talk about today is storytelling as brilliance, resilience, and cultural continuity. Those are things that I've been deeply contemplating as of late. And I wanted to think about a balance between traditional knowledges and contemporary learnings. And that's where I situate myself in the work that I do. So, I forgot. There we go. Got to remind me. There we go. There's the quote. Right now, I'm doing some doctoral work, and one of the scholars that I am leaning heavily on is Dr. Joanne Archibald, because the work that I hope to do for my community in the spirit of generosity and reciprocity is based in story and narrative. And that's what we are talking about here today. Shifting stories, shifting narratives, finding out truths. And so I wanted to talk about these things not from an academic perspective, but how we as educators, you as educators in your classroom, as a system, can meaningfully embed these ideals into the foundations of your practice. Indigenous education is not only a what and a why, but it's a how. How do we do this work? We can do all the things that are out loud and in your face, but the things that create the biggest systemic change in terms of our system is when we embed Indigenous knowledges as a foundation to how we do this work. And so I'm going to give you examples today, something hopefully practical that you can take away and begin to embed immediately and action your reconciliatory efforts. The first one, respect. There's that word again. It'll be repeated over and over in different cultures. Although we're not pan-Indigenous in our ideals, that is one word that I hear that is held up higher than the others, and that's this idea of respect. When it comes to stories, I know one of the roadblocks to doing this work is the fear of tripping up in protocol. So what I hope to offer you today is things that will give you courage, tools in your toolbox to give you the courage to take risks in your practice. I think healthy risk-taking is necessary, and what I often tell educators, are we uncomfortable or are we unsafe? It's only through our discomfort that we are growing. My daughter, who is 17, had growing pains last night, and I'm like, what? You're already like 3 inches taller than me. But discomfort is growth. That's one of those things. I thought about her as I was preparing for this. She's not happy that she's growing still. She's getting pretty tall. So respect. What we're taught is in community is to recognize the dignity, context, and ownership of stories. Stories were shared with us today. How do we carry those stories with respect? Be careful, listen deeply, honor storytellers and knowledge holders, and there was a role modeling of that honoring today. Before using an Indigenous story, learn about its origin. Is it locally relevant and contextual? Check with cultural holders or elders if appropriate. Use listening with 3 ears, your left ear, your right ear, and your heart. Often we take things in and it stops at our brain. We're very analytical. I have made it a practice when I hear things to let it land in my heart and process it emotionally. Honor the feelings that come up. Is it guilt? Is it shame? Or is it the happiness that was shared with us this morning? Then I kick it up to my brain and analyze it after I've honored my feelings. We need to begin to honor our feelings when we're confronted with the truths of others. Responsibility, this is huge. We have a belief in community, especially those who are name holders, that those names carry deep responsibility. And even if you don't have a name, you are the children of people who have names. And we apply the same things to our stories and our knowledges. We have a responsibility as educators to think about the meaning and impact of stories, to consider the consequences of misuse, plan thoughtfully how to introduce stories, anticipate student responses, facilitate reflection, follow up with caring discussion, and ensure that students understand that the use of stories is not a superficial add-on, but a relational responsibility. And a lot of what we talked about and grounded ourselves in today was this idea of relationality to one another and the expectation of relationship. Reverence. I felt that sense of reverence this morning as I deeply listened to our elders. Recognizing the sacredness in stories, the spiritual or deeper dimensions, the connections to land, ancestors, and values. Treat stories not just as texts, but as relational living teachings. We often think that the only teachers in the room are the humans. But both living and non-living things carry more teachings if we stop to pay attention. Begin with protocols if appropriate. Often, in a time when we are deeply thinking about compassion and mindfulness, even centering, so we can slow ourselves down from the busyness of our world, which this world has become increasingly more busy. Our students need to center themselves so they can open up their hearts and their ears to take in the information that they need. Reciprocity, one of the teachings, especially in our governance system, is this idea of generosity. You are rich by what you give and not what you have. Teach our students about reciprocity when they are being told stories. And this embodies the ethic of give and take. If one receives teaching, one gives back. And it doesn't have to be monetarily. There's not an expectation that you give something of equal value. We can give back in different ways through sharing, caring, applying, and giving thanks. After a story is shared, provide opportunities for students to respond. Share their reflections or give back in some way through art, writing, or community action. Involve students in co-creating classroom protocols for how to share. I thought about this. I was like, did I ever do that when I was a classroom teacher, as a primary teacher. So we embedded our work in story all day. Build protocols, and they don't have to be traditional Indigenous protocols, but think about protocols within your classroom, and protocols are really just expectations. Holism, recognizing that learning involves all parts of a person, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical, and is embedded in community and land. Design story-based learning experiences that engage the head, the heart, the body, the spirit through movement, art, reflection, circle dialogue, site-based learning or land-based learning, integrate multiple modalities, visual, oral, embodied. Story is not just text. This speaks to the orality of our people and how we engage the entire body in this work. I think of when my first work that I did after university, I was a fisheries biologist, and I contemplated this idea from the UPAC worldview, which is a way of propping up this Indigenous perspective against Western science. And I thought about it deeply, and I think about it in this work as well. How do we engage when we are learning? And are we doing it with our whole selves? The UPAC worldview is that when you're out doing scientific investigation, you're not just seeing, and as a biologist who is trained traditionally in Western sciences, I would look and observe the natural world. That's truly what a biologist does. But in that definition, it didn't say, how does a biologist hear the natural world? See, feel, all your senses. So when you lift up Indigenous perspectives alongside Western, because I think there needs to be a wonderful marriage of ideas that the next generation can grow from, consider that in your teaching, and consider that those ideas of sitting in story. We often ask about the parts of the story, but let's go deeper into those additional senses with our kids, because they need to deeply reflect about self as well. Interrelatedness, everything is connected. Stories, storytellers, listeners, land, community, other stories, time. Encourage students to draw connections, and we do this. We do this all the time. I did this as a teacher, a classroom teacher. How does this story connect to our lives, to the land we live on, to historical context? This is where we get deeper into our reconciliatory journey together. Use mapping, webs, and relational diagrams. Invite students to bring their own family and community stories and connect to them. It makes me think about Chief Seattle and about the web of life. We are one strand in the web of life, but we're all connected, all related. And this exists through space and time. I think about, I only right now can think about what Einstein said. He called this phenomenon spooky action at a distance. And actually, a few years back, the Nobel Peace Prize in Physics defined it finally. So Einstein, way back when, called it spooky action at a distance. Chief Seattle said we're all part of the web. What we do to the web, we do to ourselves, talking about interrelatedness. But what these three physicists did finally is name what Einstein and Chief Seattle were trying to say, and it's called quantum entanglement. And that no matter what we do or what we say or how we act, it impacts people through all time and space. And I think of that teaching Wagoose and how we need to be careful with every action, every word, because it has impact. And I think about the impact that we heard this morning. That impact has lasted through all time and space. And so with that care and with that idea of interrelatedness, we need our young people to understand how interrelated they are to each other and to the land. I think those relationships are incredibly important, and we can ground those teachings by introducing them to each other, to the land, through story. And the last piece is synergy. And this is what I was talking to Donna about. The dynamic energy that arises when story, context, listeners, and telling come together. Meaning emerges from that synergy. Be attentive to timing, context, relational safety. Let stories unfold rather than being overly delivered. I think that's incredibly important. We come from a really product-oriented system, and we have to. We have report cards, we have deadlines, we have reports. Man, I don't miss report cards. Well, writing them. And in the way in which we did at the time, I don't know if that process has changed. It's very tiring, but very good work. But I put a lot on those pages. A lot of my heart, a lot of my time, a lot of my soul. It was good work, but I remember being wrung out after report card season. After storytelling, allow space for silence, inquiry, reflection. Use circles or co-inquiry rather than a top-down explanation. Have our children explain it to us. They might make meaning that we hadn't even contemplated. Their brilliance will emerge. All of these 7 principles of story work, when you're engaging in both Indigenous and non-Indigenous stories, ground us and become our foundation for how we use story within the work that we do. But Tahai taught me today that we need to do this also for ourselves, especially in the time that we are in right now, when self-care, self-reflection, and knowing self is paramount to keep us healthy for the challenging work that we do every day as educators. So, from the teaching of Tahai, also think about these 7 principles in how you treat yourself, respect yourself, are responsible for yourself, have reverence for yourself in the important work that you do. There is nobody else that I would trust with the future of our communities and our nation than teachers. Holism. How are you taking care of your whole self in this work? Interrelatedness. Create more connections. Create more connections, but most importantly, connect to yourself. And synergy. Find those people, the people around your fire, where you feel that synergy and great work will flow. I'm like, where am I? What is Indigenous brilliance? Why are we talking about it today, especially during this month? It is rooted in community land and the ancestors. A brilliance that shines through story, art, ceremony, and everyday life. Not about individual achievement, but collective strength and survival. Indigenous communities are polyphonic, many voices. Why is it important that we reconnect with our strengths and the things that make us connect and feel a part of the community right now? This is the question I've been thinking about. Those same matriarchs and hereditary chiefs that taught me the land acknowledgement taught me this, that pre-contact and even these are pre-potlatch teachings before we started our traditional form of governance. And this is specifically to the Natadin community. In my introduction, which you probably didn't understand, is that I'm from Nakasley in Fort St. James. That's where all the princes are from. But through provisions of the Indian Act, my mother married the chief of the Lake Babine Nation, who is consequently chief again. And at the age of 13, my mom, my sister, and myself were transferred to the Lake Babine, and I've been a member ever since. But my roots, where I come from, my lineage is in Nakasley. But these are Natadin teachings, and they've been great hosts of me and my mom and my sister, and have made us a part of the community, speaking to the generosity of our people. So before there were other people here, we had traditional roles. And you'll hear them today, maybe not some of the other ones, but we had matriarchs, very specific and important role. We need to hear more stories of matriarchs and the roles that they play within our communities, especially matriarchal communities that we have here and along this coast into the interior, all matriarchal communities. Everything we inherit through our mother. In my introduction, I said, my clan is Beaver. And that was every woman throughout my lineage since time immemorial. There were watchers. These are people who are guardians of the community. Elders, males had roles as protectors, and children are at the center of this model. Our communities were filled with people who had specific gifts that contributed to the whole society. People had purpose. And when I think of the mental health state of this world, and I think about the state of our communities and some of the crisis that we're seeing within community, I feel more now than ever that we need to find our purpose, every individual, and I think we all crave that as human beings. We crave purpose, and we crave this need to find our brilliance, the thing that makes us uniquely us, the thing that we were put here on earth to contribute to our community. How does story promote Indigenous brilliance? The more we know about the contributions of Indigenous people and understand each other, we will dispel long-held narratives. The whole community, both within and outside of our community, benefits from that knowledge and from the dispelling of those harmful narratives that have persisted for far too long. What we need to do is reconcile our whole story. And so I was incredibly happy when we talked about the resilience of our people and the history of our people and what we've had to endure, and that these are living experiences and not from 150 years ago. And so I was incredibly grateful for the courage of our elders to share their most personal stories. We also need to talk about the other side of that, and that is the brilliance. We need to have that balance, because if we're going to reconcile our history and our people, of these territories, and learn about each other, there are great things. It's just like in non-Indigenous society, we often carry, well, I don't because I'm Indigenous, but we often carry, I hear about stories of carrying colonial guilt. I was doing a TEDx talk, and there was this lady in the front of she was in her wheelchair, and she was sitting at the front, and I can still see her in my mind, and she had this cool hat. I guess she was English. I have an Aunt Nuala in Belfast, and she has fascinators, and they're awesome. And she sat there so tentatively, and there was a Q&A after this talk, and she put up her hand, and she said, "I am so sorry." And she had an English accent, and she said, "I'm sorry for what my people did to your people." And I said, "Oh my goodness, my dear. You cannot carry the burden of guilt for your entire people like I cannot carry the pain of my people. That is too much for one person. But what we can do is we can learn from it and never repeat those things again. It is a learning experience, and that is just too much." And you could see the relief in her body. And I heard from, and something you might want to look up, and I usually have a QR code because I think now more than ever, we also need to reconcile who we are. Everyone's on a journey of reconciliation. You can hear our elders reconciling their histories, their truths. But as we do that, I think it's important to disaggregate what is Western and what is colonial. There are brilliant Western knowledges that we benefit from every day. We have incorporated those Western knowledges into our societies. Honestly, I couldn't go back to twining my own net to catch salmon. There's no way. That I admire those pieces, but we have used Western knowledges to bring forward our knowledges. We benefit from the knowledge of everyone from around the world. So for your sake, separate those ideas of Western and colonial, because those two things are not the same thing. I believe that we are better together, absolutely. And so Dr. Dustin Louis has a paper on that idea of Western versus colonial, because that is a barrier to reconciliation. And it perpetuates the stories that we tell about each other. Indigenous brilliance, this is where we need to get back to. This summer, I was in a course by Dr. Bill Cohen, who is a Seal elder and scholar, and he took us out on the land, the Seal land in the Okanagan. I went to his nation, the Penticton Indian Band, and I got to meet Ruby and April Alexis. And these two women have spent 20 years learning about this plant, and it's called Spitzen in the Seal language, Sinchilthin. And in English, it's called dogbane. And it's used for making cordage, so I actually got to make some tradish cordage. I was pretty impressed. But what impressed me is that these two women have a PhD level knowledge of this plant. And before there were other folks here, every one of our community members had these gifts and this knowledge that they held for the community and passed it on and shared it. And I thought, what dedication, how brilliant is that? How amazing to see that they've learned about this traditional plant that has so many uses for the Seal people, and doing it so humbly. But that's the brilliance I speak of. Tahai shared what made her feel brilliant, spelling. And I think about my mentor, someone who is a matriarch in my life, and I respect deeply, Monique Grace Smith. And I was at a Pro D event, I was sitting in the seat like you, and she said, our job is to plant seeds and recognize the gifts of our children. And we do this in Indigenous communities. You'll say, oh, that kid's good at that. You'll hear the elders, they're really good at that. And the kids hear it. And it becomes their reality. We have to recognize the gifts, because imagine a child going through their life never hearing what they're good at. That's another story, another narrative. Those seeds that you're planting may become something, so keep planting them. I'm gonna keep this thing right here. Okay. And check the time. Storytelling is medicine. I said we laid down some medicine this morning, really good medicine. I learned so much this morning. Oral traditions equals ways of knowing. Story carries teachings, protocols, and guidance, connect generations past, present, and future. I think about the storytellers in my life. I didn't know how amazing this was, and I keep using that word, but how, I just say deadly this was, but when I was going to school way back, and my great auntie Catherine was the carrier language and culture teacher, the Dakas language and culture teacher. And this was in like the early 80s. And I didn't realize how profound that was, and that not everyone got that experience. I was very privileged. She was one of the great storytellers of my life. And then conversely, my grandfather's Irish. Loved my grandfather, John. I was like, you know how Irish I am? I have Grandpa John, Uncle John, and an Auntie Mary, and so on and so forth. He told me stories, and they both were great storytellers. This is what I remember, and these are the people that I descend from. And these were the seeds that were planted early in my life. Is they told stories from our culture, and I believed them because they told them like they were history, they were truth. You couldn't tell me when I was a child from my Dakas language that at one point trees walked freely. Imagine how delighted I was when I watched Lord of the Rings. I was like, yep, see, there it is. It's not just us. And then my grandfather spoke of fairies and leprechauns and believed them. He warned me about these were teachings, and both were warnings and teachings. And I remember those throughout my life. And I was so grateful for that. I didn't as well realize what a privilege it was to have those stories, to have that knowledge. I had a lot of cultural privilege growing up, and I didn't realize that it wasn't afforded to everybody. So one of the great storytellers that I look to is Richard Wagamese. If you need medicine in your life as an educator, because I truly do want you to take care of yourself, buy the book Embers. And what I do, and this was a practice that one of my colleagues, Michelle Miller-Gauthier, does, is she gifted me the book and told me just to flip to it on any random day and open up Embers and read it. And the teaching it may directly apply, and you're like, oh my goodness, or it'll apply somewhere in your day, but it's good medicine. And Richard says, all that we are is story. From the moment we are born to the time we continue on our spirit journey, we are involved in the creation of the story of our time here. It is what we arrive with. It is all we leave behind. We are not the things we accumulate. We are not the things we deem important. We are story. All of us. What comes to matter then is the creation of the best possible story we can while we're here. You, me, us, together. When we can do that and we take the time to share those stories with each other, we get bigger inside. We see each other. We recognize our kinship. We change the world one story at a time. He was a brilliant man. And his stories is what he left behind for us to learn from, and we continue to learn all the time from him. Teachers are storytellers by nature. And I don't know if all of you would characterize yourself as that, but when I was teaching, I found that I was weaving stories all day long. And I thought about, how do we use local stories? How do we look at the children that are in front of us, look at the diversity of the room, and honor that diversity by the teachings that we're sharing? In some of our communities, that can be incredibly diverse, but in the research that I've done with students around their success, there's 3 indicators of Indigenous student success, a model that both myself and Dr. Dustin Louis created, and it was created from the students and their voices. They need to feel safe and cared for in their environment, and they need to see themselves in the environment. It's far easier to walk into a space if you can see yourself in it. Stories are alive and relational, we've said that before, and they connect us to our past, our ancestors, and the land. And I'll keep repeating that because all our stories come from those spaces. I think about this idea that we need to not only reconcile, but we need to revive practices within community. And one of the elders from Lake Babi, Natudan elder, talked about these stories were called Jadede. And they were entertainment. They were the schools in pre-colonial times, the first classroom, and many types of stories were shared. And the storytellers of our communities, because not everyone has those gifts, but everyone learns the stories. An older person would sit in the middle of the room, and children would be sitting around that person, and they would share jadede, and that was their form of entertainment, especially in those cold months. Oh, I keep talking into this thing. It's right here. Holy, okay. I think about the oral tradition, and I think about the Natudan people who primarily still live in the oral tradition. Of all the Wet'suwet'en, Natudan, and Dakelh speaking, they're very similar languages, and once were all called carrier. Of all the nations, the Lake Babi Nation has the most fluent language speakers, the youngest being in his 40s. And a lot of the members are silent speakers, my husband included. He was raised in an environment where his parents, his mother was a hereditary chief, his father was also hereditary chief, and they spoke, and this is commonplace still in the nation. And so my husband can hear the language. And then there's the lost generation, the thing Donna couldn't even contemplate. And I couldn't contemplate, and I often think about this. If it's your first language, you think and dream in that language. No? Not after a while? It replaces it? I love that. Did you hear that? After a while, if you're immersed in the English-speaking world, you stop thinking and dreaming in your language. Okay, thank you for offering that. That's something we need to think about as a people. The Naditan people have a strong oral tradition, and so I speak to the local educators about that, about the way in which they convey teachings and to harness the strengths of those kids. The people of that nation are so strong in their orality that they have an incredible memory because they have to remember everything. Nothing's written down. My husband, and I thought it was just parts of my family, I thought it was just parts of the community, but as over the last 3 decades, more than 3 decades that I've been in a part of that community, I noticed this phenomenon, and their recall memory is insane. And so locally and contextually, I told the teachers about this strength. Build upon that strong oral foundation. We will heal by continuing to take every opportunity to replace harmful narratives with traditional stories that connect us to our identities. And that's inclusive of ourselves. We're in a time when we need to understand who we truly are. We cannot connect to others if we're disconnected to ourselves. We will try, but it'll be more powerful if you know exactly where you come from. And for some, that work is harder. But you are the culmination of your ancestors' decision-making, their struggles, their triumphs, you. And if you look at the math and the probability of each of us being born, it's really low. And so each of us is a living miracle, and we need to honor that. Children's literature as story work, this is where modern-day storytellers are contributing to these ideas of reconciliation and remembering. Children's books are this modern continuation of the oral tradition, accessible pathways for youth, families, and educators, and infuse cultural teachings into daily life and classrooms. So these accessible pathways, it's one of the things that Gabrielle, my younger sister, and I are hopeful for. Oh my goodness, I was interviewed, and I always say this because it still hurts. I was like, how is it writing a book with your daughter? I'm like, Gabrielle is 4 years younger than me, thank you. I'm like, yikes. Yeah, that did not go over well. But I always say that just in case someone says that, because she's about yay high. And at the time, she had adult braces, so I attribute it to that and not how I was presenting. How do we create these accessible pathways? Youth. Stories and picture books or early readers provide entry points into cultural knowledge in age-appropriate, engaging ways. They spark curiosity, empathy, and identity exploration. Families. I did a family literacy project in one of my role in my former district. Books become tools for intergenerational connection. Grandparents, parents, and children can gather around them, just as they might around an oral storyteller, like the Jadede I spoke of. Educators. Children's literature offers teachers who may not be knowledge keepers themselves a safe and accessible pathway to introduce Indigenous perspectives while modeling respect for the sources and context of those stories. For educators, this means that children's books are not just stories. They are pedagogical bridges that allow you to connect students to Indigenous teachings with cultural integrity. We got time? Just wait. Oh, I got like 10 minutes? Yeah. I will send this out and you can do a personal reflection. And I introduced you in my introduction to my 3 children, Kobe, Ella, and Ava. These are my other children, my stories. And when I was asked to speak, I don't generally, one of the biggest teachings in our community is humility. And it's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm an author, and have these books. And so I embed those knowledges and don't speak to them directly but indirectly, but I think we need to hold them up. There is a renaissance of Indigenous literature out there right now, and so we need to hold them up. This is part of our truth. So, Be a Good Ancestor was what Gabrielle and I wanted to share because it speaks to the teachings of our people and the expectations of our people. That we are living ancestors, and this idea of a living ancestor, that what we do will impact and ripple out beyond ourselves. And so this is how we are mindful and how we navigate the world. And so the key message is every action creates ripples into the future. In the book itself, it's be a good ancestor with your words. We know how much words have power. I think when I was teaching, I was doing a reading group, and it's the first time I read My Name is Sepitza, and that's a text, one of very few texts at the time. And she said, an older person said, oh, she has big ears. And so her whole life, she thought she had larger than normal ears, or whatever that is, but she had actual physically big ears. But what the elder was trying to say was that she likes to be nosy and listen. And she had those words manifested where she would hide her ears. And it wasn't until later that she finally realized what the meaning of that was, but it impacted her for a very long time. So in our book, we talk about words have power. Words become truth. Be a good ancestor with your words. Be a good ancestor with your thoughts. Thoughts become change. Thoughts become ideas. Ideas become actions. Actions become movements. Movements become change. I think about this often, and I ask children in the spirit of Richard Wagamise's quote, what is the legacy that you want to leave? What is the impact that you will have? Because at the end of the day, the story that is told about you is what you will leave behind. And so some of the activities that I do with children, I get them to deeply contemplate what it means to be a good ancestor. I was on a tour in Japan of 4 schools, and this one academy wrote their own Be a Good Ancestor book from their perspectives, their context. It was really beautiful. So the reason Gabrielle and I put this out is so that there's knowledge of how the expectations of our people, especially when we're in the climate and the world's in the condition that it's in, we have to understand these fundamental teachings of how it is and the expectations of being a good ancestor always to each other, to the land, to ourselves, in every single way. A Dance Through the Seasons. Stories come to us in different ways. And in our communities, there are dreamers. And one of my colleagues, she's Métis, she came up to me in our school and she said, you're gonna leave us. And I said, I'm not leaving this school, I love this school. I'm gonna retire here. And she goes, no, I had a dream about you last night, at least I think it was you. She said, you're going to go away, you're going to learn, and then you're going to come back and you're going to lead us. I'm like, what? I don't want to be a vice principal. And I was like, sure. And I've said this many times throughout my career, and here I am. But she was right. It was like back in, 2012? I don't know. Somewhere around there. I think it was 2012, and there was that massive strike that lasted through the summer. And I was brought into the board officer like, Leona, we want you to think about being a vice principal. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I thought about Shalene's words. And I was like, okay. And I was like, and there it was. So I went back and I went to another school. This is in Prince George. And then, sure enough, the following year, they put me back in the school that I left, Nasteo, House of the Future. And I was there to lead. This story teaches us about, when you thinking about those 7 principles of story work, the sacredness, the deeper meanings, the synergies, think about those stories. This story is about leadership. Now that you know the dream was gifted to me and I turned it into a manuscript. This is also a call for all of us to start telling stories. Take that chance. Did I ever dream I was going to be an author? No. I wrote this on lined paper, and it still sits in my safe, that original manuscript, pen on lined paper. It's a story about humility. It's a story about the things we need to learn to do the jobs that we need to do. Taking our time in our learning, patience and time, one of the First People's principles of learning. There's also the cycles of nature. One of the most powerful tools that you can use, and there are many storybooks about it, is the seasonal rounds. Google Open School BC Seasonal Rounds Unit. What a great way to ground yourself in local knowledge. And your own knowledge, how you connect to the land on a yearly basis. Or you don't. When you do your own seasonal rounds diagram, you'll see how disconnected you are from the land. And that's just as important. Brilliance is found in the rhythms of the land, sky, and water. Land-based stories keep us aligned with natural law. And we need our children to be aligned with the rhythms and the laws of nature. They're too disconnected. And this is my sister and my latest book, Remember Who You Are. We want our people to remember who we were before 150 years ago. The strength we carried in community, how we showed up in our lives every day, and the brilliance that every single one of our members in our nation carries. This was for them, but it's also for the world to be introduced to the layers of brilliance of our people so that we can combine knowledges and create a better world. Brilliance shines when we are rooted in who we are, and that's for everybody. We feel more connected. We feel more grounded. The one thing that I will take away from this is to think about your own thoughts, how you feel, and to listen to yourselves. I often talk about relationships between people because that's how we're often told about reconciliation, but you gave us a layer of how do we reconcile with ourselves? I'm gonna go find a mountain and scream in it. I was like, that's one of the ways I learned that I'm gonna reconcile some of the things that I'm challenged with daily. Good medicine. Story reminds us of our worth, even when the world forgets. Our people need to be reminded about who they are. And we as educators, there are only 5% of the teaching population in BC are Indigenous educators, which means that the other 95% are non-Indigenous and are tasked with bringing these stories and knowledges. But hopefully I've given you some ways to bring this knowledge in a safe way that ensures cultural integrity. The power of storytelling in community. Oh, geez, it's 11:30. Okay. Okay. Oh, I have till 12. Okay. Thank you. The gift of time. Storytelling brings people together. Stories are a meeting place. They gather students, families, and communities into shared spaces of listening and learning in classrooms. Storytelling fosters belonging, strengthens relationships, and creates community. This collective experience mirrors traditional Indigenous practices where stories are told in circle, emphasizing that no one learns in isolation. Storytelling heals trauma through connection and voice. For Indigenous people, stories have always been medicine. Sharing stories affirms identity, validates lived experiences, and provides safe ways to process intergenerational trauma. In the classroom, inviting Indigenous stories and student voice creates a healing space where children can see themselves reflected and know that their stories matter. Storytelling shapes the future by reminding us of the past. Stories carry memory. They remind us of the impacts of colonization, residential schools, and attempted erasure of Indigenous identities. By keeping these truths alive in classroom, stories help us move forward with honesty, compassion, and commitment to change. They empower young people to imagine a future rooted in justice, respect, and relationship. So how do we tie this? I think we've wove together the threads of story, reconciliation, and truth. Reconciliation is not only about acknowledging the past, it's about changing the present and shaping the future. Storytelling supports this work by restoring voices. Honoring Indigenous voices in the classroom counters historical silencing. Repairing relationships. Shared stories foster understanding and empathy between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students. Reclaiming teachings. Indigenous values embedded in stories guide classrooms towards equity, responsibility, and respect. Reimagining, and boy do we need it, reimagining futures by listening to stories of resilience and hope. Educators and students together envision a reconciled future. And there's a hidden T in truth and reconciliation. Actually, two: trust and transparency. In order to get to truth and reconciliation, we must trust that those truths will be honored. We must be transparent in our relationship, and that's how we get to reconciliation. So it's like TRC. And so think about trust and transparency. This is for our educators, when you bring Indigenous stories into your classroom, you're not just filling a literacy block. You are participating in reconciliation. Storytelling becomes a practice of healing, teaching, and relationship building that benefits all students while honoring Indigenous peoples and truths. So often when people confront you with, what are you doing for reconciliation? You're like, ooh, I weave truths, I weave stories. Remember, it's not only what you do, but how you do it. Think about the ways that you can ground your practice in local principles. It's less flashy, but more effective, because the students that enter your classroom will feel their values in the foundations of how you do your work. Indigenous brilliance in action. So how do we bring out the brilliance of all of our children? We must move from a place of knowing to known. Those are two separate things. Meaning we need to take action. This doesn't mean that it has to be in massive ways. There are ways we can achieve this in our classrooms through simple reflections and deeply thinking about the teachings of the books that we share with our students. And so I'll give you some examples that I've heard of teachers doing or I've done myself. Students writing their own legacy letters. I did this reflection activity with students where I was like, okay, imagine, I said this way more gently. I'm just going to tell you what I meant. Imagine it's the future and it's 5 generations after you and you've long since passed. And there's a picture of you on the wall in one of your family's homes. What would be the story that is told about you? And I would go to the students and I would say, what are you good at? And tentatively, I'm good at art. Oh, we need a lot more artists and illustrators in the world to bring our words alive. And I said, think about this. What if your painting, and I can really see this one young girl, she was so excited by this, your painting's on the wall. And it's not just your painting that they were talking about. What else would you want them to say about you? This legacy that you left your family because you thought about what it meant to be a good ancestor. And that I was caring, that I loved animals. And so she started thinking in this idea of 7 generations, 5 at the time that we were talking about, and the legacy she left for her community, her family, and this painting. Describe your painting. And so a simple reflection or just writing these things out loud, on paper, there's been really hilarious things. Draw yourself in 100 years. Those pictures are hilarious. They're like, my goodness. But what is the legacy you're going to leave? I talked about the seasonal rounds. I think they're incredibly important. We can learn to localize our practice through the seasonal rounds. Most nations, I wouldn't say that, some nations publish these seasonal rounds, and you can learn about how the people of the local territories navigate the land, how they learn from the land, how they harvest. These are very important things that a lot of us do throughout the years. I have a seasonal round every year. I do specific things in our territories. But I'll tell you about this group, and it was in Vanderhoof, and there was this heart group, and it was students who had some form of loss in their life. And there was kids from the res, farm kids, and town kids. And they charted their seasonal rounds. And there was a lot of like fishing and hunting and berry picking and all the things. And then the town kids were about canoeing and going to the park and like very relevant to their context. And then the farm kids were talking about when they've harvest or culled their animals. And there was one thing, and it was like the slaughter of the lambs. The town kids and the res kids are like, what? And they were kind of like taken aback. And the teacher very gently said, the word is slaughter, and that's a farming term. But you harvest, they harvest. It's a word that you used here is you said you hunt moose, you're harvesting. Another word is slaughter, and they're like, no. And they're trying to get to a place. The power of that activity is showing people who come from very opposing worldviews that they all rely on the land and the animals of the land in their contexts. And they're like, you hunt, and there's rich conversations between folks who never get to really intersect. Because at the end of the day, the children are bussed out to psychas. The young people from the farms go out to their farms to do all this incredibly wonderful work where they're connected to the land, they're working. There's some hardworking folks, and then the kids in town get to experience a more, that experience away from those pieces. So you have all these people intersecting, but once they charted their seasonal rounds, the relationships grew because you better understand each other. There was an activity where I led this with a teacher group, and 2 women who had been working in the same building for 10 years both realized that they love cross-country skiing. And I joked, I was like, geez, we don't have that many trails, you didn't run into each other? I was like, where are you cross-country skiing? It's Burns Lake. Both of you must have bumped into each other at Otway at some point. No, in 20 years. And so they got to talking about it and then joined each other. And this was one of our Indigenous education workers and a teacher. And because we live in these like siloed experiences within education, we don't often talk to each other. And when we talk about how we're grounded in the land and our experiences, we can create those bridges. And so not just pedagogical bridges that I talked about as storytelling, but relational bridges to each other. And then identity and pride projects. Who am I? I know we have to be sensitive because we have demographics, children within our system who are in care, children who may be disconnected from their families. And so this identity work is sensitive. One thing I do impress upon children is that no matter who we are, we have ancestors. We have gifts from our ancestors. They made it possible for us to be here today. How do we honor those gifts? So make it in the present. Who are you right now? Who do you identify as your community now? When we make it present, it's less harming for those who don't have the privileges of those who are raised within our families, because that's another privilege. I also have to acknowledge the rich territories that I'm in. Brilliance beyond the page. I talk to you a lot about oral stories and written stories, but storytelling happens in Indigenous communities in more ways than we can think of, and I think we need to explore those as a system and integrate them into our pedagogy, our curriculum, our classrooms, and in the environment that the children come into. And the last time I was actually in this building, my son, Kobe Antoine, was graduating from the Frida Deasing program. I was sitting up there. I was so proud of him. He's my oldest. As we were coming into Terrace, he apprentices under Stan Bevan and sometimes Dempsey Bob. And in that beautiful roundabout, my son worked on those poles, the carved wood elements of those poles. He's a young carver named Kobe Antoine. And this speaks to the generosity and relational accountability that nations have to each other. We did have carvings, but we lost it. And the masters that they are, Stan Bevan and Dempsey Bob, have taken my son under their wing so we can reinvigorate our carving practices within our communities, which has been lost. And so they've taken him under his wing. And so when I think about brilliance beyond the page, I think of some of the teachings that Kobe shared with me from Dempsey Bob specifically. Renowned Tahltan and Tlingit carver Dempsey Bob teaches us that carving is not just about shaping wood. It is about shaping identity, caring forward ancestral knowledge, and honoring relationships. His work reminds us that storytelling does not live only in books, but in many forms of Indigenous expression. Songs like the ones we heard this morning, drumming and dance, carry histories, prayers, and instructions on how to live. Art, beadwork, regalia, like the one that our friend here, it was wearing this morning. I complimented her because I just loved her vest. Those embody stories of families, nations, and lands. She was telling me how that it was made for her by her sister and that she would like another one. There's a lot goes into the preparations of those regalias, and they carry the stories of the makers. Ceremony and everyday teachings weave lessons into daily practices, showing that storytelling is lived, not just told. Through carving and other art forms, Dempsey Bob emphasizes that Indigenous stories are embodied knowledge. They live in hands, heart, voices, and community. So how can teachers bring these elements of story into their classrooms? Honor storytelling beyond text, use local Indigenous art, songs, and regalia and lessons to show students that knowledge can be carried visually, musically, and if appropriate, ceremonially. Invite with due care elders, knowledge keepers, and local artists to share the stories embedded in their practices. Understand that sometimes a Western view of art appreciation is very different from Indigenous art appreciation. Only the carver, the painter, the weaver, the sewer knows the true story of that item. And it's not up to us to dissect it, but to appreciate it and to wait for the stories to be told to us. I think of when I do this, when I go to galleries and I look at it and I think, and it's not faux pas to do this, but it's just a different way of contemplating art appreciation. When I go and I see paintings like, oh, I think it represents this in a Western way. So it's that idea of, you know, the stories that that artist is trying to say. In an Indigenous world, art appreciation is acknowledging that we can never know the meaning of that art, and that story has to come from the artist. And there's a lot of deep reflection and prayer and reverence that goes into creation of art. Create space for expression. Encourage students to explore their own storytelling through multiple modalities. I mentioned this earlier. Carving clay, painting, beading, movement, drumming. Show that literacy is not just reading and writing, but also creating, performing, and making. Teach the values embedded in story work. We started with those 7 principles of story work. Stan Bevan, Dempsey Bob, and other local artists can become spaces. Dempsey Bob, Stan Bevan, and other artists in classrooms create classrooms that could become spaces where Indigenous knowledge is felt, seen, heard, and lived, not only read. So I put this up here, not to sell books, but I often get questions after the fact of where you can find books. And so there is the QR code, but your lovely district has been really supportive, and there'll be copies going to schools. This is our latest book, like I said, by my younger sister Gabrielle and myself, and illustrated by Mohawk illustrator Sarah General. She's incredible. I always am in awe as to how illustrators can bring words to life, and without their vision, stories are just words on a page. This is Gabrielle and my contribution to helping our people find their brilliance. You come from a long line of matriarchs. Your culture is built on the strength of women. Remember who you are. You are more powerful than you imagine. Your traditions and knowledge reflect this belief. Remember who you are. You were created with everything you need to succeed. It was written in the stars. Remember who you are. You have the blood of many resilient ancestors flowing through your veins. Feel the power of all those who came before you. Remember who you are. Oh, there we go. You belong to a culture built on respect. Respect others, but more important, respect yourself. Remember who you are. You were born to be exactly who you are. Your people recognize and encourage your unique gifts. Remember who you are. You are the result of generations of love. Love inspires kindness, selflessness, and sacrifice. Remember who you are. You come from a people who honor the truth. Live and speak that truth for the benefit of everyone. Remember who you are. You are destined to be a warrior and a protector. You will ensure the safety of your people. Remember who you are. You are a pillar of the community. You are capable of contributing to everyone's success. Remember who you are. You are intelligent beyond belief. Your instincts and awareness provide nourishment. Remember who you are. Our societies are complex, diverse, and beautiful. Our people were created to hold strong in our beliefs and convictions. We are nations that hold others accountable and move everyone forward. We live both firmly rooted in our past and are inspired by our future. We are the children of chiefs. Remember who we are. Thank you. So there's a page at the back of this book, that second last line, children of chiefs, there's a word for it in our language, and it's skaise. When you hear us open up our bathlats, our potlatch, we say Denise, Zakuze, skaise. Denise are the male chiefs, skaise are the female chiefs, and I'm skaise, children of chiefs. And this is an important lesson, a powerful word in the Nadudan language. It means that even though we may not be hereditary chiefs ourselves, that we must always remember that we descend from greatness. It means that no matter where we live in the world, we carry the names of our ancestors and must adhere to the cultural expectations of our people. It is a reminder that we all have the potential to lead. And so, what I will leave you with, if possible, every single one of us in this room, we are the stories our ancestors dreamed into being. And the call to action, in addition to the 94 calls to action in the month of Truth and Reconciliation, is to carry the stories that you heard, the ones that affected you viscerally, carry those forward and into the classrooms so that we all may benefit from our collective future. And this is the first time I'm doing this, so you can give me some feedback, but I have created a teacher reflection guide, activities you can do amongst the staff. I often do this for children, but I think it's important that if we are to role model reconciliation, that it starts with us. So feel free. I'm going to send Tracy and Donna the PowerPoint, and you all can look at it. Of course, taking my story out, my publisher is never too excited when I read things in full, but that's my generosity. And thank you all so much, Masai, Snachalia. Snachalia in my language means you honor me with your time and your presence. I know how precious your time is as educators, and you being present today sends a message to the communities that we're moving this work forward together. So thank you so much. Masai. Nope. Let me get out of your way.
Hi. Oh, I gotta move this back, because you know I'm short. Okay, good. Well, that spoke to me in some very different levels today. Walking in two worlds. Walking and bringing that balance and having that balance in your life. That's what I took from it. I am an Escapi. I often don't speak about my First Nation. I don't often speak about my language, my culture, but the truth. So that's the work that I have to do, right? So yes, walking in both paths. Anyways, on behalf of Coast Mountain School District, I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, Leona, for sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and stories with us today. Your words remind us of the strength and brilliance that live within our communities and our students. The stories you shared not only inspire us as educators, but also call us to reflect, to act with purpose, and to create spaces where all learners feel seen, valued, and connected. Thank you for guiding us with your voice and your vision, and for reminding us of the power of story and shaping who we are and who we are becoming.
And, oh, in the spirit of reciprocity, I have some books for some lucky folks in the audience. I'm happy to know that our books are being translated into other languages, and especially French. My father's first language was French. He was born in Montreal. And this one, the Remember Who You Are, was done in English and Cree and French. And so, first and foremost, is there anyone, the first person up to the front, with Cree heritage? Anyone with Cree heritage?
Anybody with Cree heritage?
Here we go. Okay. There's someone? You want to come on down? There we go. Thank you. And I know that you have some immersion schools and French classes, so is there someone from the, you have an immersion school, right?
Yes.
Did I make, and right there? Immersion school, here we go. And anyone who teaches French outside, all of you do. Is anyone else? Here we go. Here we go. Everybody bring those up and share those. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. There we go. My towel.
So as we come to a close, I really would like to thank everyone. It was a really special morning, and throughout the presentations, same as you, Leona, I sort of took a few notes, and it's like, wow, that really makes sense, or it caused me to think in a different way about the relational responsibility. And I'm trying to connect and encourage everyone here to take what you've heard this morning and think about it this afternoon. Because in your schools this afternoon, you're going to be working with your colleagues about the new LEAs, the local education agreements. And last year, the district, we worked with nations, we invited school admin, elders, district staff, teachers to contribute throughout the creation and have input in those agreements. So we have 8 brand new local education agreements that we're very, very proud of, that we worked through a process last year. So this afternoon, we want to, again, using Leona's language, let the LEAs unfold. And we have a lot of collective strength in this room. Do we know the answers to everything and how to carry all of that work out? No, absolutely not. Not yet. But given the information and the sharings and the knowledge that was shared with us this morning, we can definitely take some of those pieces and the examples that you so kindly have shared with us, and also the reflections that staff can go through, utilize that to connect what we've learned here this morning to how can we support the implementation of those local education agreements. So I thank you in advance for that. And I thank our custodians and our secretaries, and again, all of our staff at schools, because we all have contributions that we can make and roles to ensure that, again, we're doing what is best for our learners and our students and keeping them at the center of the work that we do. So again, I extend our deep gratitude to our elders, our knowledge holders, our keynote speaker, Leona Prince, who shared their wisdom and teachings with us today. Your voices guide us on a journey of reconciliation and remind us of the importance of walking together with the Gitsan, Haisla, Niska, and Tsimshian nations. A special thank you to our district Indigenous education staff. So thank you, Donna and Vanessa. It's their first in-service day that they've put together since joining the district and their new positions. So much appreciated. So thank you very much, and that concludes our morning. Enjoy the sessions this afternoon. Thank you.